Bilvavi Mishkan Evne Ladar kivoido Ule Mishkan Mizbeach osim Likarnei hovoido Bilvavi Mishkan.
So welcome to this week's Torah perspective on parashat Terumah, where we will examine what it means that we build a tabernacle. The tabernacle is called in Hebrew a Mishkan. Mishkan comes from the word Lishkan, Shochen, it means to dwell. A Shachem in Israel is your neighbor. In Hebrew, Shechina is the word for God's dwelling in the world. And we will come to these words and these expressions and the meanings of that as we progress. Mankind has always looked to find a place of connection with the divine. In archaeology, the earliest signs of human civilization are places of worship, are temples, are also statues of their various gods. The little figurines of the mother goddess that you find in the graves of people who lived in the time of the Neanderthals. They all show us the wish of mankind to seek a connection with the divine. Mankind was created with a God-shaped hole in its soul. And we can understand that because we were created in the image of God. And naturally, we seek this connection. But we Jews have been very, very careful with holy places and holy things and declaring things holy. For example, it's difficult to think of an event more central to Jewish consciousness and to the Jewish soul as the revelation on Har Sinai, the giving of the Torah. Well, you can go to the Sinai Peninsula and you will find no sign of a Jewish temple on any mountain which is called Har Sinai. There's no such thing. There is hardly anybody in our history who is more central to us than Moshe Rabbeinu, the prophet, teacher, the founder of our nation as a nation, is surely Moshe Rabbeinu. There are no pilgrimages to his grave. His grave is not even known. The Torah is very careful to say that nobody knows his grave until this day. When Moshe Rabbeinu encountered God at the burning bush, he was told to shed his shoes because the earth on which he was standing was holy. But once the burning bush was not there anymore, the ground wasn't holy anymore either. There is no holy place where Moshe Rabbeinu encountered the burning bush. The places that are holy in two respects. The graves of some of our holy people have become pilgrimage targets, and sometimes even graves are being invented or being ascribed to great figures from the Jewish past, when in fact they are some Muslim scholar from the 11th century. One of the places that we regard as a holy place is, of course, the Me'oras HaMachpelah, the cave of the patriarchs, which is located in Hebron today. And also there is a purported burial place of Yosef HaTzadik, of the patriarch Yosef, which is in Shechem, which is today called Nablus. There's also the burial place of Rochel Imenu on the way from Bethlehem to Jerusalem, Kever Rochel. These places are holy because they remind us of the excellent and eminent people who are buried there. They're not holy intrinsically because they are on holy ground or anything like it. We venerate the places not because they're intrinsically holy, but they are places where we honor great people or great founders from the past. We certainly do not adore the place itself. It is not in that sense a holy place. There's only one holy place, and that is the Temple Mount. And you know why it is holy? And it is holy, will be holy always, because God said that he would dwell there. He had that place that he had chosen to dwell among us. And that is an almost absurd idea, that God should choose a physical place to dwell among us. Humanly speaking, such a thing is impossible. Actually, when Shlomo Melech, King Solomon, inaugurated his temple, he pronounced a prayer, and you should actually look it up. It is very moving. You find it in Melachim Aleph, in the 8th perek. You find it in 1 Kings, chapter 8. And one of the things that he says there is, Ki ha'umnam yeshev Elokim al ha'oretz. Will then in truth God dwell on this earth? Hinei hashumayim ushmei hashumayim lo yechalkelucho. Behold, the heavens and the heavens of the heavens and the outer reaches of the universe could not possibly contain you. Af ki habayis hazeh asher bonisi. What then about this house that I have built? It's an impossibility. Yet, he says I should build it, and I do. And that is actually the basic reason and the basic ground on which we find ourselves when we speak about Binyan HaMishkan, the construction of the Mishkan, the construction of the dwelling place of God among us. In the temple of Solomon, in the Beis HaMikdash of Shlomo Melech, this did not become a holy place until they brought the Aron Brit Hashem, the Ark of the Covenant of God, into the place. That was the moment that it became the Beis HaMikdash. And what is in the Aron? The two tablets of the law, they are the Shnei Luchos HaBris. There is the copy of the contract that God has with his nation. You do this, you do that, you behave like this, you behave like that, and then I can dwell among you. Let's look at this Aron Brit Hashem. It is mentioned in this week's parasha, right in the beginning, Va'asu Aron atzei shitim, and they shall make an ark of acacia wood. Amosaim v'chetzi orkal, 2.5 amot, 2.5 cubits shall be its length. V'ama v'chetzi rochbo, and 1.5 cubit ama shall be its width. V'ama v'chetzi komato, and 1.5 cubit ama shall be its height. Pay attention to the strange measurements of this object. It is not 3 by 4 by 4 or 2 by 3 by 3. It is 2.5 by 1.5 by 1.5. What are these halves doing here? Why do we need to have a construction of the center point of God's dwelling among us? His Aron HaKodesh should have measurements that are in halves, that are kind of broken measurements. The word midah, measurement, itself gives us a hint, because midah, mem dalet he, adds up. The letter mem is 40, the letter dalet is 4, the letter he is 5, it adds up to 49. And not coincidentally, 49 is 7 times 7. 7 expresses the furthest extent to which this natural world can go. Our weeks we count from Sunday to Shabbos. Shabbos is the 7th day, and after Shabbos comes the new week, the first day. When we talk about an 8th day, we're always talking about something that transcends this physical world. Things that happen on the 8th day are always a connection with the spiritual worlds above. For example, the Brit Milah, the circumcision of a baby, takes place on the 8th day. The the festival of Sukkot has an 8th day, which is unique among all Jewish holidays. It comes after the 3 pilgrimage festivals. It comes after the 3 agricultural festivals, the rhythm of our natural life. On the 8th day we transcend it. And we call that day, of course, Shmini Atzeres. It is also Simchat Torah. It's also the rejoicing in the Torah. Because the Torah is that object that was resting in this ark with the broken measures. With this midah, with this measure of midah is 7 times 7, 49. But it transcends the container in which it is kept. So this place where the Arona Kodesh is housed is called Mishkan. It is that place where God's presence among us rests, his Shekhinah. And that's why it's called a Mishkan, because it's the house for the Shekhinah. This concept of Shekhinah we must try to understand. I'm not claiming, I'm not even attempting to fully explain this very deep matter tonight, but we can give it a try. We can come a little bit closer. Shekhinah, in popularized Kabbalah in these days, is called like the feminine aspect of God. It's a typical example of how pop culture gets hold of holiness and trivializes it and makes it subservient to the trends of the day. And Shekhinah means indwelling, and it addresses a fundamental problem when you talk about a relationship with God. God is the holy other one. He is the creator of the universe. He is the reason for everything that exists. He is totally and utterly outside time and space. So how can I possibly have a relationship with him who is so far away and so distant and so inconceivable and so unknowable? Comes in the Shekhinah, God's wish to have a relationship with us. Now, if you think about it carefully, then you realize that when it comes to knowing someone else, you're on a slippery surface, and you easily can misunderstand when you look at somebody. You think you know them, but you really don't. All you do is you look on the outside. Who can know someone else? Who can really know, for that matter, himself? Even when you reflect on yourself, what you see is what you want to see and how you want to interact with yourself. But we all have had the moments that we were confronted with sides in ourselves that we had no idea of, that we had carefully buried under layers of self-deception. When you try to have a relationship with somebody, all you have to go by is that relationship itself. The pretense that you actually know someone else, or for that matter yourself, is an illusion. If you would know that someone else, you would be that someone else. If you would know God, you would be God. So how do you have a relationship? Well, the word says it already. You relate. You act on an interaction of a confrontation between two entities, if you want to. Anybody who's married knows that marriage is a work in progress at any time, and that you're forever trying to make the best of a relationship and make that relationship itself grow. Any two people who get married under the impression that they can change one another are suffering from a delusion. The only person that you can possibly have any hope of changing is yourself. But what you can do is you can change the relationship. You can invigorate the relationship. The same is in our relationship with God. But as we say in Hebrew, kal v'chomer b'no shel kal v'chomer, even more so, even more so. Because at least we have something in common with the people with whom we interact. We're both humans. We have similar concerns. We have similar worries, and therefore we can compare notes much easier. How can you compare notes with God? How can you say that you have similar concerns as God has? This is preposterous. Of course, this is a solution. If you make your concern the concerns of God, then you do have similar concerns. And that is the educational process that God has embarked on with humanity when he gave us his laws, when he gave us his directions for use for his world, which we call the Torah. So when we build a resting place for the Shekhinah in this world, we have to build that place with the right measurements and with the right ingredients to achieve that goal of creating a place for God to live in our world. There's something else. We do this in response to God interacting with us. He tells us to do it. He gives us a mitzvah. He gives us a commandment to make a mishkan, to make a dwelling place. Is it a dwelling place for him to live in? Is he in need of a house and the protections of a roof and walls? Of course not. And this is exactly what the Torah in this week says in so many words.
Va'asu li mikdash, v'shochanti b'selchom. They shall make for me a sanctuary, and I will dwell not in it, but in them.
The Rabbiner Hirsch, the German Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, who was the leader of German Jewry in their attempt to find an answer to the spirit of their time, which was trivializing Judaism. That movement was called Reform. It cannot be even compared with what today is called Reform Judaism. It was an ideologically driven enterprise to undermine the very basis of Judaism, whereas today's reform is simply Judaism light. It does not deserve the scorn that we have for that reform movement of the 18th and 19th century. Rabbiner Hirsch was the leader of German Jewry in their attempt to counteract this ideology, but not just counteract it as conservatives holding on to things from the past, but as radical conservatives, meaning people who were willing to hold on to the things from the past and see them through to their most radical consequence. And that philosophy, the Rabbiner Hirsch called Torah im derech eretz, Torah integrated with the ways of the world, not making Torah a hostage to the ways of the world, but the other way around, to make the ways of the world hostage to Torah. And his slogan was, B'chol drachecha da'ehu, in all your ways you should know him. Whereas those who were conservatives tried to say, be a Jew at home and be a German in the street. This to the Rabbiner Hirsch was nonsense. You are a Jew at home, you're a Jew in the street, you're a Jew wherever you go. For the Rabbiner Hirsch, the Torah was the supreme light by which every Jew should walk and every Jew should live. Therefore, he termed the Mishkan das Gesetzesheiligtum, the sanctuary of the Torah. Gesetz was his way to express in the German of his days the notion of Torah. Of course, literally today it means law, but for the Rabbiner Hirsch, Gesetz means Torah. So building a Mishkan, we need ingredients and we need a building plan. And about that building plan and its implications, I want to speak in the second video that I will post this week. For now, let us realize what a preposterous idea it is in the first place to attempt to build a place for God in this world. And on the other hand, how absolutely amazing it is that we got a mitzvah, that we got a commandment to do exactly that. And therefore, we are forced to think how we do that. And that I want to explain in our next talk. I hope to see you then. I think this talk should be seen in the light of the next talk that we will post.
והוא עובר והוא יהיה בתפארה אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציא נברא לעת נשא בחפצה כל אזי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא והוא היה והוא עובר והוא יהיה בתפארה אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציא נברא לעת נשא בחפצה כל אזי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא והוא היה והוא עובר בתפארה והוא עובר והוא יהיה בתפארה